Welcome to Higher Ed Athletics. Today I'm joined by Matt Roan, the athletic director at James Madison University. Matt, thanks for being on Higher Ed Athletics.
Travis, I appreciate the invitation. It's good to be with you today.
Yeah. Well, you just released some news at the department level a couple days ago before we came on here is strategic changes to ticket and revenue models. So I was wondering if you can perhaps just go into some more of the details that was in the release and maybe the strategy behind it.
Yeah, I think in terms of details, right, we're at the midpoint of a football receipt that we do every 4 years. So we're going into year three with that. We are about 2 weeks away from renewals for a basketball reseating on our men's and women's, kind of keeping those in schedule with one another. But for us, the announcement really was just about our football tickets going on sale or those renewal periods coming up, basketball being a few weeks away, and just really kind of teasing into the changes that we're having to make, whether it's um, trying to build people into the pipeline, obviously understanding that we have to meet the ever increasing cost of college athletics, and the fact that we want to be sensitive to our market, but we rely on our market to give us the best chance to be successful, and really kind of just teasing into again this notion that from our ticket standpoint to from our development standpoint, from our multimedia rights approach, just looking at multiple ways over multiple years of trying to enhance the revenues that we can then invest in our programs.
Yeah, I like that you still mentioned in there in the release that you want to be you're aware that people are can only give to their level and that they still want to participate and so it does seem like a good way to. I mean, it's not getting any cheaper to run an athletic department. So especially in the fully member of the FBS and in the Sun Belt, not going to get cheaper anytime soon.
Yeah, and the last thing that we ever want to do is either be or be perceived as greedy. And for us, JMU athletics is special because of people, and that's our student athletes, that's our coaches, that's our staff, that's our administration, the incredible alignment that exists here. But that's the people who vote with their feet, right? Who come out and support us, whether it's in Bridgeforth Stadium or the Atlantic Union Bank Center. And so we want to make sure that they continue to do that and that they're able to continue to do that. And so while there are adjustments that have to be made for us to ensure, or at least try to ensure, that we have the same type of success that we've been able to enjoy over the last several years or decade plus, right? We want to make sure that we're never forgetting who's got us to this point and that we're bringing them along with us.
Yeah, I wonder is that a difficult conversation or they kind of understand it with you coming in as the well, you're not a new athletic director here anymore. It's been a while now, but I mean, just from different than they've worked with in the past, have you been able to kind of build those relationships up to the level where you think that they understand where you're coming from?
I think so, right? And I certainly hope so, that there is, a trust in the direction that we're going. And we try our very best to make sure that we are communicating as well as we can, right? That we're engaging as best we can so that when we're asking people to participate, when we're asking people to invest, they understand the why. And obviously, the why is to allow us to offer an incredible experience for the people who are here every single day, for them when they visit, and obviously to continue to be successful in all three phases, right? The academic success, athletic accomplishment, and personal development.
Yeah, it's a campus that I have not been to yet, and I can't wait to one day visit. So I have this thing where anytime I travel, I prefer to drive, and I stop at campuses. And I've been to several in the Carolina area, some in the Virginia area, but this time when I was in Virginia, I had my wife and kids, and I don't think they were as okay with me going so far out of the way like I'm used
Yeah.
to. So another time, but I can't wait because it does seem like a close knit community. Whenever college game day was there back in the day, a couple years ago, and obviously a lot of success. So
Uh, You're,
can't wait to visit.
you're welcome anytime. We'd love to have you. It's again a great campus, great community, but really just a beautiful part of the state, right here in the heart of the Shenandoah Valley. Just incredibly fortunate to be here, and we'd love to host you sometime.
Yeah, and mutual person we talked to, President Benson from Coastal, he gave me the golf cart tour. So I mean, you said you guys were competitive sometimes, so maybe I can get one of them golf carts when I visit.
Yeah, we'll make sure it goes a little bit faster and sets up just a little bit higher than the one that he put you in.
Yeah, that's true. We
Absolutely.
did go a little slow down the road, but it's okay. He's the president. He's got to wave at a lot of people.
He's a popular guy.
So early experiences as an athletic director. So I believe I don't do public math, but I think you might have been the youngest athletic director in the country when you got in that role at Nicholls State earlier in your career. A lot of people know you from Eastern Kentucky and then now JMU. You're on your third AD position. So when I was writing these questions, I was kind of thinking of a struggling rookie quarterback that might be here in the hometown of this podcast, Indianapolis, in the NFL. It makes me think about, were you confident from the start, or did you make some early mistakes? And do you think those early mistakes, being one of the youngest ADs, has really shaped the decision making you have to make now? Which the decisions now, you're at a higher level, yes, but like it's also like just a demanding shift of the whole industry.
Yeah, there's probably several questions, right, and that I could answer. Kind of going back to, I guess, my mindset in pursuing the job at Nichols and obviously being afforded it. I did have confidence in myself. Maybe blind to the nature of the job, right, and the demands of the job, but I believe in kind of my vision for athletics and on what an athletics department can be. I believe in our mission, supporting student athletes. Having gone through that experience myself, I've always felt my purpose is to ensure that young men and young women have a similar experience and that they're poured into just like I was by coaches and teammates and people who supported our program as a community in different places. I believe in my value system, right? That whenever I was given the opportunity, as long as I was guided by kind of my value system, we would be okay. I am incredibly thankful that my career started at Nichols at 32 years of age. I look back now, and that's almost silly that I was afforded that opportunity at that age. But I'm incredibly thankful. What I inherited there were a great group of coaches. Obviously, a president who hired me, and then after a year, a new president came in that really embraced me and was tremendously supportive. But even more, just that community. I saw firsthand right away, right, that when a community embraces its college, right, its team, you can accomplish pretty special things. And over 3.5 years there, I did make mistakes, right, and there are things that I have tried not to repeat, whether at EKU or here. There are probably things that I have repeated, just you occasionally make the same mistake twice, and I've tried to limit those. But the grace that was afforded me there, the ability to kind of roll up your sleeves, and with a limited number of staff, a great staff, you kind of become immersed in college athletics, right? So you're setting out chairs, you're hanging banners, you're asking a lot of questions, right? And you're making a lot of decisions every single day. And just incredibly fortunate that I was able to have that opportunity. Incredibly fortunate that I was able to be invited back to EKU in 2020. And then obviously, again, grateful for the opportunity that's came 4+ years later. And that was to come to JMU last year. But, for me, Travis, I think over that, almost nearly decade now, the advantage that I hope that I have, and again, that I think that I have, is from 2016 till now, it's just been a lot of change, right? And I don't have anything to compare it to, where others have maybe sat in their chair for a long time and have said, "Well, I remember the way it was," or "I wish it were still this way." For me, we've constantly navigated change, and I hope that that's allowed me to kind of operate now from a position of strength, where it's always this kind of what's next mindset. How do we continue to evolve and make sure that we're providing the best experience that we possibly can?
Yeah, you you came to. We mentioned EKU a couple of times. I'm just kind of thinking about What was we don't need to go in from what made you go to Eastern Kentucky back to there, because I know you had a previous background there, and we talked about the President Benson, who was eventually the president there. But maybe what led you to making, amidst all this change, after getting through COVID and everything, that you decided to go after the JMU, or they went after you, whichever one. What kind of made that the right time in your kind of personal story?
I think my simple answer is it's JMU, right? To me it is one of the best brands at any level in college sports. Tremendous resources here, tremendous infrastructure, tremendous support that allowed me to really want this job, right? That made this a very very attractive job professionally. On a personal level, this is my home state. I grew up about 2 hours southwest of Harrisonburg. Obviously, I had gone to school for a little bit at Virginia Tech before transferring to Southern Utah, where President Benson and I ultimately met and kind of formed our friendship and his mentorship to me. But this was a perfect fit professionally, personally. It was the opportunity to come home and to be a part of a tremendous place that has unlimited growth potential and in this era in which we find ourselves. But all that to say, it certainly wasn't an easy decision to leave EKU. That's a community that embraces Colonel athletics, and that's a great place to live. Two of my kids were born in Kentucky when I was either in law school at the University of Kentucky or our first go round in Richmond there at EKU. And so a lot of special people to us. Certainly had worked for a friend in David McFadden, a great friend of mine that was my boss at EKU, and felt like we were growing the athletics department together there. But JMU was one of those that I had always kept an eye on, and again, just a perfect fit for me personally and professionally.
Yeah, and to get there, the only things you had to deal with, I think, were, I think your football coach had already left for IU, which I'm okay with. I'm a triple IU grad almost, and worked there most of my career. But that can't be easy. And then you just now hit this full level of FBS membership, and the Sun Belt, the kind of the rise of the Sun Belt. I feel like it's kind of gotten so popular the last few years. So you have no shortage of. You didn't have to, you know, necessarily get to that point, but now you got to catch up and level up. So I'm kind of just curious, what kind of strategies and things that you have to do from the beginning and now to kind of take that next level, to be at the top of the Sun Belt, and then
Yeah.
whoever knows what happens with your future membership, if the changes to college athletics.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of go back again. A couple questions in there. Yeah, Bob Chesney. When Coach Signetti left for Indiana, Coach Signetti was hired in December of, I guess, 2023 to come on board. When Coach Byington left at the end of our run in Brooklyn last spring for Vanderbilt, Preston Spradlin was hired from Moorhead, and I was very familiar with Preston, having only been about an hour and a half away from him there in Kentucky, and has done a phenomenal job. And then I was the new one to the party, right? And then I was hired about the same time that our president had announced that he was going to be leaving JMU and pursuing another opportunity. But I've been incredibly blessed with our current president, Charlie King. Tremendous supporter of athletics. Fingerprints are all over campus. And so there's really been this no notion of staying put, right? Standing still, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, whether it's myself, whether it's our president. Again, I spoke to it just a moment ago, that alignment that exists here, right? People believe from our board to our division heads, our other vice presidents on campus, people believe in the value proposition of JMU athletics, right? What we do to enhance this campus, to enhance this experience for our students. And so while there has been a lot of new, right, we're all kind of cut from the same cloth, and everybody's moving and pulling the rope in the same direction. But I want to give credit to my predecessor and Mr. King. So, Jeff Bourne sat in the seat that I'm sitting in for 25 years. And there had been opportunities 5, 6, maybe even 10 years before the decision to go to the Sun Belt. Um, but Mr. Bourne, was very, very strategic about pursuing the right opportunity to enter the FBS ranks. And while there had been that interest, and while he was being very strategic, it wasn't a matter of just, again, kind of sitting around. Our infrastructure, areas that we want to prioritize, our facilities, our support staff in areas like personal and career development, our Duke's Lead program, our integrated health and human performance, sport performance area, the number of trainers, team physicians, all those sorts of things that we're doing, um, the resources that we give our programs to be successful. When we came into the Sun Belt, we felt like we were at the top, right? We had leveled up. And so I think to your point, we want to make sure that we continue to hold that position. But we also want to make sure that we're benchmarking ourselves against other A4 and non A4 peers, right? Whoever they are and wherever they may be. And so, that requires us to continue to invest in our facilities. And we're going through a master plan process right now that requires us to continue to make sure that we're giving our coaches the tools that they need to be successful. And so we benchmark ourselves, our coach and staff, coach and staff retention efforts, right, are really, really important for us as well. So we want to make sure that we're compensating at or near the top of that peer set as well. So, came into the situation, in a position of strength, at least for me, right? I know that, again, the decision had been many, many years in the making. But when we came into the Sun Belt, ready, and I think expecting to compete for championships year in, year out. We want to make sure that we continue to have that mindset.
Sounds like you guys, the institution had a long runway for once you got in there to prepare with that consistent leadership and throwing in the resources. John Cunningham from Cincinnati had talked about that a few years ago when I had him on here, and they had just joined the Big 12, and he's like, well, the people before me have been investing in this place like a Power 4 or Power 5 at the time for years, and that's why we were ready. And so I think it's really important because, like, I study college presidents too. I've worked for presidents. Having a transition of a president, even if it's an interim, I mean, that could put the brakes on a lot of stuff in athletics if the board's not supportive of the interim, or and you see it at some places like I feel like, I won't say the school, but there's like a job that keeps not ending its search for a president, which means they can't even start the search for their athletic director, and it's been like, I think 2 or 3 years since they've had a full-time person in either role. And so you just have to, I mean, it's good that you guys have that. And so do you have an interim president right now? Because I thought.
So our president right now is a gentleman by the name of Charlie King. So Mr. King was a 25-year senior vice president and CFO who oversaw athletics for much of his tenure. And again, when I say his fingerprints, whether it's our facilities, whether it's the resources that we have available to us, he was instrumental in that, along with Mr. Bourne. And we have a friend that sits in the president's office today, and looking forward to him to continue to lead as long as he can.
Okay, well that takes from my question was going to be onboarding the next president, and this one already has probably more of an understanding than everyone in that department. Maybe not you, but maybe if he's been there 25 years as the CFO too. Because I've always been curious about learning a new management style of someone that maybe didn't pick you. And so all of a sudden you haven't been the AD, and I think you've gone through this before, where you the tenure for presidents is a lot shorter than athletic directors. I think it's like 2.5 years at this point, but that at least the person left on good terms, and this person currently in the role is a kind of a lifer, it sounds like, at the institution. But I mean, any advice, since you have gone through this several times with different scenarios, of like, if you're this sitting athletic director, however long you've been there, and you all of a sudden have a new president, I mean, how are you are you just listening, or are you preparing something for them that maybe like a department overview? Whether you're on the cabinet or not, the president's going to talk to their athletic director.
Yeah, so I will say I have gone through this process before. Again, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bruce Murphy who hired me at Nicholls, and we had the opportunity to work together for about a year before he announced that he was transitioning away from Nicholls. And then a guy by the name of Dr. Jay Clune came in, and both of them, right? It was a treat to work for both of them. Different styles, different communication with each of them, but both effective in their own way. And again, I'm appreciative of both. And so as I go through this process, Travis, we want to make sure as an institution, right, that in that division heads group, right, in that cabinet group, that we're communicating certainly with the next president through our current president, right? Mr. King will lead that process for us, right? He'll lead that transition for us. But the way that we're communicating with transition documents, there will be a consistency that I think exists there, and a template that we'll all use to make sure that we're giving the next president a snapshot and detail on each one of our areas that he or she can utilize to their benefit, and certainly ask questions of Mr. King or us if needed. I think as that person gets here, right, you'll learn their communication style, right, their communication preferences, how often, how regular, all those sorts of things. But just make sure, my confidence comes from, again, as you go into an opportunity or as you onboard someone else, that our vision is a shared vision. Our mission is well understood. But if I lead with values and I've surrounded myself with a great team, I hope that gives the next person confidence in the direction that we're going, and gives us the reason to be excited for what's to come.
Yeah, because no matter who becomes, if say it's a first-time president at any institution, all they're going to, at least at the surface, that they'll know about college athletics is that it's constantly changing. There's so much chaos, but you want to also reassure them that, hey, our athletic department, we know what we're doing. We're steady. We're taking these precautions. And so I'm sure that would be an easier transition too. And I don't think that people that have never been an athletic director, I've asked this to several ADs on the podcast over the years, and Ross Bjork, when he was still at Texas A&M, he had a good comment too about this. But I don't think a lot of people realize how often athletic directors speak to other cabinet members, because you are all on like the same team for the president,
Yeah.
and you have athletics has such a footprint and everything on campus, and unfortunately, unless I think Ross said that he used to have his senior staff interact with their counterparts on campus to try and realize, like, hey, I've always thought there's a lot of similarities in the type of work. You're in the same environment on campus, that there's just so many crossovers. But if you're the deputy, or the senior associate AD, you never talk to those other people in these roles, in student life or business, whatever. That it can be a shock, I imagine, when you become the athletic director and you're like, wait. You almost need to know a lot about higher education.
100%. We have weekly meetings as a cabinet, as a division heads group. I think I lean on them and have one-off meetings all the time, right? Whether it's with student life or whether it's with our vice president for finance and administration or our provost, right? I mean, to me, I would encourage, again, to your point, our senior staff, our admin team, to do exactly the same. So if we're talking about professional development, that we're working with central talent development. When we're talking about a facilities project, we're working with central FM to make sure that there's that collaboration. I've kind of coined this phrase over the last few years, and it's something that I really believe in, is we are a part of the institution, not apart from it. And I think that's rooted in the places that I have been, right? That's rooted in mentors who I have learned from, that were outside of athletics, that were on a college campus. But, my experience is shaped by my attractiveness, really, to college athletics. Was born out of my first job on a college campus at my alma mater, where I had the opportunity to shadow our CFO, to shadow and do projects for our provost and our VP for student life. And what I realized is that in athletics, we do a little bit of every single one of those things.
Yep.
but just with a different population, right? We do it with coaches and sports specific staff and student athletes instead of faculty, university staff, and the overall student body. But the attractiveness to college athletics to me is that notion that we are a microcosm of what happens on a college campus.
Yeah, and whenever I decided to do a doctorate 5 years ago and got into it. The president at my institution at the time told me go for the IU one, don't go for the school I was at didn't have one, but I decided I want to take a higher education doctorate because I only have sport management and athletic administration background, and I was a compliance person at the time, and I was like, well, whether I end up working in a department, because I am landlocked Indiana, I have an agreement that we won't move. But studying college athletics from the lens of higher education has been helpful because if you take a doctorate in higher education, for one, nobody else in your cohort is going to be an athletics person.
Sure.
You already get to bring a different perspective, and we'll get into this with the last couple of questions. But I do think people just almost need to be able to get a crash course in higher education and what is the president dealing with? What is shared governance? Because you're going to even interact with faculty. So I think it's awesome that you kind of got that perspective early on in your first job.
Yep.
Well, the next thing I want to talk about is trends in AD hires. I like to get perspectives on this at different D1 levels, and you've been at different types of places. Are you seeing any kind of new trends or making any projections about? We've talked about this maybe going to more of a pro sports model, but I don't know that if that reaches like the AD seat, but we have people thinking now about how they shape their careers if they're like a lower mid-level manager. I mean, it used to be lawyer or it used to be like sport management. Now it's like lawyer. And I think the SBJ put out an article about how so many athletic directors now have law degrees, but they only listed like 4 in the whole article. But I do think it's popular. But are you seeing trends yourself? And with that, maybe even projections on what you think the next kind of area will be?
I saw that same SBJ article.
And I don't disagree with it necessarily.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't read as much as I probably needed to on it, but I saw the headline there, and I will say for me personally, right, that the decision to pursue my JD, I think was the best decision that I probably ever made, just in terms of how I think, how I communicate. I think it's served advantageous to me, and I would hope that colleagues around the country, right, peers around the country who have a similar educational background as I do feel the same way. I probably haven't done as good a job as I need to on kind of keeping up with the trends piece.
Well, now you are an athletic director, so I guess you don't really need, you're not looking around.
I think the piece of advice that was shared to me, I think whether you're, again, have a doctorate in higher education, whether you are a JD, whether you have an MBA, to me, you have to be well-rounded. And a piece of advice that was given to me is that you could be a phenomenal fundraiser, but if you don't understand compliance, then you're not going to be a really, really good AD. Or you could be phenomenal at, managing a budget, but if you don't understand the push and pull and how to deal with a coach, right, how to communicate to a coach and the politics and the leadership that comes into play with that, then you're not going to be as successful as you maybe could be. And so I think whether it's a hiring trend or advice maybe that I would give those that are pursuing being an AD for the very first time is to just be as well-rounded as you possibly can, to maybe be good at everything in the absence of being great at any one particular thing. Obviously, if you can be great in several things, that helps you. But that's a piece of advice that was given to me that I took to heart. And so I tried to make sure that I was, inserting myself into different parts of not just college athletics, right, but higher ed. Again, back to the question that we answered just a moment ago. So I'll be interested in your research, Travis, when you're going to share it with me soon, the trends that you're seeing and those hires.
Yeah, I am doing a couple of different. So my dissertation is down to really 2 different things. One will be basically college presidents' decisions of who did they hire. The other one would be the traditional pathway of an athletic director because it really hasn't been researched in several years, especially before all the changes happened.
Yeah.
Which is one of the challenges with academia is, but especially if an industry like athletics is changing so quick, you can't really. By the time you study, write it, publish it, it's changed, and I think that's caused some scholars to maybe hold off or maybe shift gears. But yeah, I keep a spreadsheet of every single AD change, and I investigate the changes, press releases. I look at backgrounds. Just things like that, because one day it will be. I will do it, but it's trying to collect stuff.
And I think one thing that I would add too is those trends. The trends are just that, right? But I think each campus is so unique, right? It is so
Hmm.
specific, and so one particular job might value an alum over any other trait or characteristic, right? One might value an advanced degree over any certain characteristic. One might value somebody who has done the job before over
Yep.
anything else that, again, so I think the jobs are just so unique. The campuses on which we reside are so unique. It's all about just that fit piece.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the president's background too.
Sure,
Did they work at an SEC? So are they now a president at G5, but they want to bring in a deputy from an SEC?
sure, sure.
And so you brand bias, I imagine, comes into play. But that's yeah, it's an interesting area to study. But the rounding this out, the athletic department structures. I'm not in athletics at IU, but they made the news for clearing some vacant positions and unfortunately laying some people off, including my mentor. And it's just part of the industry right now. We've seen kind of the D2 schools, a couple of them look to drop sports, but I don't mean to be negative here. I'm just kind of thinking like big picture. If they really are going to, some schools go to a pro sports model, but we still have these sports that we have. I mean, I wonder if the athletic department structure, as someone leaves, I'm not saying like lay people off, but like as someone leaves, do we retool that position instead of just saying let's hire that position back? But I mean, we may be thinking about what jobs everyone here is doing. What need do we have? If someone does leave, do we even need to fill the spot? Do we have room in there? I'm just kind of curious. I'm sure every athletic director and their staff has to think about this stuff. So I'm not trying to pry. I'm just asking like your high level of what you think the structure changes might need to be.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back to where we started, right? And this ticketing and revenue strategy for us. It was, again, it goes back to values. For us, we wanted to make sure that we were or are protecting and equipping the 18 programs that we have. We want to make sure that we have a broad-based athletics department where we expect to win in everything that we offer, right? And we want to make sure that it's not just the competitive success. Again, it's the experience that we provide, and it's the academic component of that as well. And so this notion of being broad based requires a certain level of investment. I think for us, as we have kind of gone about our house plan, both our roster numbers to meet the limits and Title IX, and then as we look with our rev share plan, everything that we tried to do was kind of with a focus on being additive. We didn't want to sacrifice any one thing that we do particularly well, or do for that matter, to do something else, and that caused us to analyze what we were doing, but just to make sure, again, stop, start, or change, or do those sorts of things. But so I think for us, I think our structure is our structure. I think this notion of being additive is kind of helped guide us. People are here because they're helping us have the success that we've enjoyed right now, right? And we want to make sure that we're not diminishing or taking away from the experience that we currently offer as we kind of move forward. And so I'll never say never.
Yeah.
But again, in the areas that I think are most important, right? Our student athlete services, compliance. Again, I talked about our integrated health and human performance, mental health, strength and conditioning, how we communicate, our creative pieces, all those sorts of things. You might reshuffle. You might ask people to kind of think differently and maybe take some things from their role and add certain things that maybe adapt a little bit better. But For us, we were just really, really focused on protecting this broad-based notion and being additive as we move forward.
Well, my last question. Some people are going to think it's super obvious, but I'm going to give you the choice of where you want to take this. But I mentioned how traditional scholarship is, I think, paused right now because there's not tons of academia, I would argue, lately in college athletic administration. There's more on the student side, but different levels of sport. But I'm always curious about devising a plan to study an industry problem, not just talk about it at
Yeah.
length on a podcast or at an actor or something like that, but or relying on journalists to get comments from ads necessarily. But if there is just a problem, even if it's not obvious, of that maybe something that could be studied in the industry, would you have kind of a wish list or anything you think in the back of your head?
Oh, that's a good question. I probably should have given me a little time on this one, a little homework before we came into this one. But
Let the record show. I sent the questions, but I know you're a busy man.
I'm telling on myself. Maybe I didn't read as good as I should have. Right? I
No,
took
it's okay.
everything, but um,
Is it just too hard right now to study things because there's so many? I mean,
I don't know that it's too hard. Right? I do think that we are, and again, I've kind of used this phrase a lot. Right? There's more change more rapidly probably than ever before. Right? And I think the pace in which we're operating is pretty quick right now. It's always again day after day after day, kind of planning for what's next. But I think for me, as maybe this is kind of coming from the legal background, and um, as we kind of move towards this rev share, direct NIL, even the third party NIL that's going to continue to exist out there is when you talk about the pro model. I'd really just be curious in that negotiating, right? Negotiating between the institution and its personnel and um, agents.
yeah.
And I think just some of that negotiating, how it comes about, the dynamics of that, the power struggle in that. I'd be curious to see if there's, I don't know exactly what the, I guess, hypothesis would be and anything and how you would study that, but it just comes to mind.
Well, I think a lot of people. So I did my grad assistant job in South Florida at Nova Southeastern, a D2 school, and I studied the NFL collective bargaining agreement. The Dolphins were on the same campus as us, so I met some people there and got to learn from them. Did some projects with them. What I found was interesting, though, is I was really reading sports law stuff, and Darren Heitner, which everybody seems to know Darren Heitner now with NIL. He's been very successful as a with his craft, but it was kind of before he was fully known. I got to meet him, read his book, study it, learn from him, and I'm not surprised he's been so ahead of all. Like I feel like every NIL thing, or if there's a lawsuit, someone looks for Darren Heitner, and he is like a brilliant person with it. But it made me think recently that you can easily access the NFL collective bargaining agreement, and they talk about like so much stuff in there. It's like 300 pages, and whether we get fully there or not in college athletics, I do think it's like a almost like a case study of saying how would this apply to this structure at this institution, or this conference level. And I think there's people out there like the that are trying to do this type of stuff, and you can see it with who they hire,
Yeah,
like positions that get posted. But I've always thought that was kind of an
no, I
interesting
do.
element.
Yeah, and I think more specifically for me, it's really the rules of engagement, right?
Yeah.
And maybe the CBA addresses that, but just you're dealing with people who are here every single day, and those that are representing prospective and current student athletes.
Yeah,
Just
like the NFLPA has to be a licensed
right.
agent, and so I don't know the rules about an NIL agent. I don't think you do, but it's it's how a lot of them got started back in the day, anyways. Is
And
they
there's a tradition and a custom that's involved there as well, right?
Yeah.
And how it's always worked. So
Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks for joining me on Higher Ed Athletics, Matt Roan, James Madison University, the Dukes. Thanks for the time.
I appreciate it, Travis. Always. Well, first it was good to meet you, and I look forward to the next time that you and I can huddle up and have a chat.